Law number 8, the law of fit. Company, job, role, person. The classic model of recruiting is pretty straightforward. Post the job at as many places as you can and see who applies. Now, sure, you might augment this with some sourcing, where you try to promote the job to potential candidates who seem to have the background the hiring manager is looking for. And it's an approach commonly seen in fishing, where you drag a net through the ocean and see what you get. Sure, you're going to get the tuna that you wanted, but you're also going to get some octopus and some dolphins and some rocks and things that aren't just useless, but are expensive to manage around. The approach of trawling the seafloor only makes sense when you think that every nurse is, well, pretty much the same, or that every salesperson is roughly effective, or that every sales leader is fairly within a well-defined band of quality. You can lose a nurse and grab a new nurse's resume from the pile and go about your day. But of course, that's not even remotely true. When all jobs are all about following rules and meeting specifications, that kind of commoditized talent makes sense. You wouldn't search through a bag of nails to get the best one, would you? But you know that that's not how businesses work anymore. The variance of value is incredibly wide. Look at the difference between your best and worst salesperson. In many cases, the difference isn't in degrees, but in orders of magnitude. Because jobs aren't about connecting dots as they are about finding new dots to connect and new ways to connect them. Jobs are more creative, more complex, since anything that could have been automated or shipped overseas probably already has been. It requires people who are willing to take their experience and apply it to a brand new situation. And despite a solid decade of begging talent acquisition teams to reject post and pray recruiting models, the stuff that made sense 40 years ago, it still remains the core of how most companies hire. But talent, and that's a pretty flexible word if ever there was one, is only half the picture. Do you think Johnny Ives would have become the designer of his generation if he worked at Caterpillar? I mean, there's nothing against Caterpillar, but their appetite for compelling design is not the same as Apple's. And I get that that's a bad example. Frankly, all examples that involve Apple are probably outliers. So let's use a sports metaphor. If you're the greatest wide receiver in football, how much better would you look if you were paired with an amazing quarterback who loved to throw it to you? And imagine how much worse your numbers would be if you got paired with a quarterback who wasn't good at passing more than 10 yards. Or think of yourself. Think about the best job you ever had. Was it the best job because you were amazing? Okay, sure, partly, but you were part of a team that supported you the way you like to be supported. You were expected to deliver things you could excel at. You were at a company that valued what you did. Didn't having those things make you perform better? Didn't they make you happier at work? And if that company didn't hire you, but instead hired someone equally skilled, but worked in a different way, who delivered work at a different cadence, who preferred make blog posts instead of social content, would they be equally as happy? Success at work is a function of the fit between the person, the role, and the company. And the employer branding is a huge part of making that fit happen. Why it works. Good hiring isn't about getting more applications. We've already talked about that in the law of quality. But it's instead about finding the overlap between the company, the role, and the person. And once you see that you can't treat the quality hire like a commodity, something that could be swapped out interchangeable like a screw or a light bulb with equal results, it becomes clear that we may have over-indexed on finding the right person while all but ignoring the thinking needed to define the role and the company. But you may be thinking to yourself, what do you mean? We have job descriptions and postings to define the role, and we have a career site and marketing to define the company. But do they though? What percentage of job postings are stolen from other job postings, or even other companies? How can you describe the role using language designed for a different role at a different company? And the answer is you can't. So So it's fair to say we're not doing a great job describing the job. Okay. Are we describing the company very well? Not really. Very, 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 very few companies have a distinct, meaningful brand. What's the difference between AstraZeneca and AbbVie? If you look at their career sites, not much. What's the difference between PwC and KPMG? Again, you'd need like a microscope and years of experience within the industry to find any kind of daylight between them. Over-indexing on the candidate is a natural extension of the company having all the power in a hiring relationship. Before 2015, the company that had the job on offer had way more power in the relationship than the candidate did. It didn't matter what the difference between a KPMG and a PwC was, because it's not like the candidate was getting offers from both of them and trying to weigh their options. This was why employer branding is necessary, not only to fill the gap, but provide the perspective that makes all this make sense. You might do a great job listing the bullets to accurately describe the job. And let's be clear, employer branding has a lot to offer the job posting creation process. But the employer branding describes the company, providing the context for all those bullets. Well, the job posts are meant to deliver some kind of value to the candidate, even when stripped of all formatting and shared on a third location, like a job board. The employer brand shapes that perception. The textually identical job posting from Twitter is not the same as the job posting from Moderna. The brand and the company matter. Without the brand, we just have a restaurant with a sign that says, "We have food," and wonder why no one shows up to order anything. Where this falls apart. Yes, there are plenty of places where commoditized talent isn't just the norm, but is in fact preferable. Look at McDonald's. Every burger from the hoof to the burp is run through a rigorous process, from ensuring that the cows have proper medication, to testing the grind size and the fat content, to equipping restaurants with the tool that applies the exact right amount of mustard or mayo on a burger, to a centralized point-of-sale system. This is all designed to ensure that it's really hard to mess up a burger. But that structure means there's not much chance for an individual to add their stamp on anything to make the burger better. Now, in places like these, and please excuse my use of the burger flipper as my example here, talent is truly commoditized, and the employer brand simply has a different kind of impact. Examples. 2 years ago, it came out that junior Goldman Sachs analysts were working 100-hour work weeks. At the time, it seemed like, something of a PR nightmare, that no one would ever want to work at this place that normally has hundreds, if not thousands, of applications per job opening. And in almost every other company, that would have been true. But why wasn't it true at Goldman Sachs? Why did a well-shared story like that not decimate their recruiting? Because every person who applied knew full well what was expected of them. Goldman Sachs is not a place for feet-on-the-desk daydreaming, or taking a "it's my birthday so I came in late" break. It's a place where you push yourself like you've never been pushed before. You don't join Goldman Sachs because of their mission or their discussions around work-life balance. You join because you know that if you work your butt off, there is literally a pile of gold at the end of the rainbow. You don't join Goldman Sachs to learn or to meet people or feel supported or because it has some sort of clear social good. You work there because the value transaction with the company is crystal clear. You give us the whole of your 20s and your 30s, and in return, we'll make you rich. It's not just about what the company wants. About 8 years ago, Goldman Sachs launched an app to help people prepare to apply, not to interview, to apply. They created checklists and processes that ensured that anybody who applied knew full well what they were getting into. The definition about the expectations of that role and the working culture were spelled out in so many ways that the usual paragraph of boilerplate from legal and 17 bullets that look generic that job posting could never match. They did everything they could to ensure that the company and the role were clear. It was up to the candidate to decide if that's the kind of thing they wanted. And they were doing all of that to create fit. And if it matters, anecdotally, I've heard that Goldman Sachs has had no problems attracting talent who want to work there, despite the article.